Good evening. We're back with more Lord of the Rings LCG. And tonight will be the Lonely Mountain. So Nightmare mode ups the difficulty significantly on the Lonely Mountain in that you have to get back all of the treasure. You have to burgle all of the treasure cards before you can move on. And that is not easy. So we're playing the Monosphere Leadership Outlands deck again. I like this deck a little bit. I don't think it's quite as good as the other version, but it does have a benefit, which is that you don't run out of cards as fast, and that is necessary in this quest because if you run out of cards too fast, you can't burgle anymore. So, going to be using Gildor to draw a card there, looking for Steward of Gondor, or no, Steward of Gondor is already out. Just looking for more cards to play, basically. We got Sneak Attack Gandalf here. This is going to be a long quest, so some plays of Gandalf are going to be used on threat reduction. Smaug gets +1 willpower for each character committed to the quest. And the Lonely Mountain increases in threat the more cards we burgle from it. It starts out with 5 cards underneath it. They're in a separate deck, which you can see there on the bottom right. For each card underneath it gets -2 threat, so the more cards you burgle from it, the more threat it's going to get. And there I briefly forgot that you don't quest for Phase 1, and then I rectify that. So Phase 1 is just a free setup phase, which is much appreciated with an Outlands deck. And I don't have a lot to play here, but I've already got, well, now I've got 3 Ethir Swordsmen, so that's going to make the questing pretty simple. And questing here for 12 against 5, 6, 7, 8, so we do quest successfully and must make a burgle attempt. It is a forced effect, not a response. So the burgle effect at the bottom of the card, I shuffle, and it is a event, and if I can discard 2 events of the card type to burgle successfully, and that will be, it's a reveal the top card, so you put it back after. That'll be treasure number 1 stolen. And treasure number 1, none of the treasures are going to be that useful. But that one, Thor's Golden Cup, you can add to the staging area to draw 3 cards. That's great. You want a very large hand size with this quest because most of the burgling involves discarding specific cards from hand, so the more cards you have in hand, the more options you have for the burgle attempts. This quest definitely doesn't favor decks with no card draw. This Outlands Monosphere deck has very strong card draw with Sword of Morthond and Gildor. So I add Thor's Cup to the victory display, draw 3, move on to the next round. And I can't travel to the hidden path without using 2 Baggins resources, so it had to stay there for the moment. I'm just going to be playing some contents of my hand, but you're going to see me hold some things back that I could afford to play, just so I have a large selection of cards for the burgle attempt. And the burgle is going to be discard 1 card from hand that matches sphere, type, and cost. Oh no, never mind. That was the encounter card. Now I'm looking for a burgle card. And it's going to be discard 3 that match the card's cost. I actually misread this burgle when I was playing it, so I don't have 3 that match the cost. I misread it as 2, or I misread it as 3 cards of the card type, not the card cost. And so I discarded 3 cards and gave myself credit for a burgle victory here when I should not have. But I do realize this mistake later and rectify it. I did not read the card carefully enough, and so I made this quest much more difficult on myself than it needed to be by discarding 3 cards that I could have kept, and by increasing the threat on Lonely Mountain, and all I got in return was I gained a treasure that doesn't have any use. And later, then I go back and realize this, and then I have to make another successful burgle attempt, so 7 of them instead of 6. Made things much more difficult on myself by not reading that carefully enough. So, I'm just doing some math here to figure out how much I need to quest for in this new round. We've got 2 progress on Smaug. When he gets up to 6, we have to move to stage 4 and battle Smaug the Magnificent briefly. And I decide I'm going to use Sneak Attack Gandalf for some card draw here. I use it during the quest phase to boost my questing a bit. And I think I keep the Errand-rider in hand, but I do play Knight of the Swan. So, get the use of Gandalf for this phase. And it's a Great Hall. One of the worst locations to get in this quest. Do quest successfully, so it's going to be burgle attempt number 3. And it will be discard 2 cards that match cost and type. So that will be 2 cost allies. Now if I hadn't foolishly discarded those other cards, I would have succeeded on that burgle attempt. But anyway, Smaug makes an attack because I believe this to be a failure. And he kills an Errand-rider. So we're going to move to the Great Hall. I guess right about now the quest is right where it should be, because I would have discarded those two cost guys by this point anyway. But I don't realize this, and so later I punish myself by burgling an extra time successfully and making an extra attack with Smaug. All things considered, just made this much harder on myself than it needed to be. But no problem, this deck is well suited to this quest because of the high card draw and the minion swarm, which is very helpful for eating Smaug's attacks. Although you can do some work as well with a high shields defender, Baragon with a Gondorian shield or something like that. Getting 3 Ethir Swordsman early meant that I could pretty much always quest for however much I need to. And that's going to force us into phase 4 because I can't afford the 3 Baggins resources. So Smaug the Golden will exit play and Smaug the Magnificent will enter play. So he's got 6 threat against. And he is considered to be engaged, and if he gets a shadow card with a burgle on it, he makes an extra attack. Just need to quest for 7 progress to get him out of the way. That pretending to sleep is going to surge into a location, so I'm not going to make enough progress to get this phase cleared, stage 4, right away. But I do make enough to clear the Great Hall. Travel cost, exhaust Bilbo, and spend a Baggins resource. I will pay that And Smog the Magnificent is going to make an attack. Hopefully only one. There is a risk here where if I got a string of bad luck, a hero could die. But in this case, there's no burgle success, so it does kill a character, so I have to raise threat by 5. As per the shadow effect. And I'm not going to have the ability to put any damage on him here. Lord of Morthond comes out, which is helpful. That will enable me to play some Outlands guys and replace them in my hand with drawn cards. I'm going to draw a card with Gildor. And Warrior of Lossarnach doesn't draw a card. It's only off-sphere cards, Outlands cards that do that. I just don't see much of a reason to play Mithril Shirt. I'm not going to be using my heroes to defend. I was thinking it could be useful as a discard if it said discard 0 cost cards. It's also why I don't play Very Good Tail here. So I'm going to quest full steam and try to make enough progress to clear phase 4 here. Need 24. So I got 23 right now. Right? Oh wait, how many did I have? 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 25, 26, 27 to 15 is 12 progress, so 6, 12. And off goes Smog the Magnificent, and back comes Smog the Golden. Now I interpret this as we don't immediately make a burgle attempt. Forced Effect was not on the table when we quested successfully and resolved the quest, so gotta wait till next turn to make a burgle attempt. Got a good sized hand, can play that Knight of the Swan and draw a card with Gildor, play the Knight of the Swan, replace it with a card in hand. Again, hanging on to these cards so I'll have fodder for burgle attempts. And gonna quest for enough to clear Desolation of Smog. While it's active, it is going to give a Treachery a surge. So that card's gonna get a surge. Each dragon in play is gonna make an attack. And it's a doomed one. And threat's getting up there now. But I do have Sneak Attack Gandalf to deal with that. So I'm going to put this attack. You don't deal a shadow card for that Dragon's Ire attack as it says on the card. And it surges into Southern Spur. We clear the Desolation of Smog, and I can go ahead and move to Southern Spur. We're going to make the burgle attempt first. And it is discard 2 that match cost and type. So I do have 2 0 cost events. Actually, I have 2 of the same name. So that's going to be a successful burgle attempt. And we'll go ahead and move to the location in the staging area. Lonely Mountains threat's going to go up. It's at 8 threat now. Gonna draw another card. And do some math to determine how much I need to clear the location. I don't play an ally. And going to be questing for a lot here, since I need to make enough to clear the location, and Lonely Mountains at 8 threat now. That's a reminder that there's 7 committed to the quest, so 7 extra threat on Smog. And it's another attack from Smog without a shadow card. And it's going to put a progress on Smog because of the destroyed enemy. So I didn't proc this effect because I didn't play an ally. But I will clear this location. It's 27 to 15, so I make 12 progress. That's plenty. And we've got a burgle attempt. It's going to be sphere, cost, and type. Not an easy one. So 0 cost leadership event, actually no problem. That'll be a successful burgle. And at this point, I think it suddenly occurs to me that I played that earlier burgle attempt, the second one, wrong. And so I go back to correct it. In a moment. So this encounter card forces a discard of 2 cards from hand. One is the Arkenstone, no problem. It is going to be a successful burgle, or a successful questing, so I burgle, and it's sphere and cost. Not a nightmare burgle, just a normal one. And this one I fail because I don't have another 4-cost leadership card. In fact, I don't think there's another one in the deck. Oh, there's 2 copies of Faramir, so it was possible. I definitely would have played him, though, so in any case, when Faramir came up, I was going to lose. And we take an attack from Smog here. Just going to kill Forlong. Doesn't kill Forlong? Oh, his shields are 3. Yeah, it does kill him, because I don't have any Anfalas Herdsman on the table. And at this point, it just occurs to me that I need to correct my earlier mistake. So I go back and check the video. And I'm just going to make things as if I had failed that burgle attempt, and I don't give myself back the cards that I discarded mistakenly, but I do correct the other aspects of the failed attempt. Back goes the burgled card to the deck. Smog is granted an attack for the failure, which means I'm pushing up against the threat threshold now. All things considered, just made things much, much more difficult on myself than it needed to be by my inattention to detail, but that's how it goes sometimes. Now Faramir is out to help with the burgling. And I draw another card with Gildor, and I'm going to use Gandalf here during the questing phase to reduce my threat, because it was starting to make me a little nervous. So each of my Outlands 1 willpower guys are going to be questing for 5. And I easily qualify for another burgle attempt, but we're getting up there on Smog, 5 tokens. The burgle is going to be 1 card that matches Sphere and type. It's another normal difficulty burgle, not a nightmare. So Sphere is leadership and type is attachment, so I do have that available. Gandalf returns to hand at the end of the questing phase. We're going to move to debating whether I want to clear that or just leave it. I decide I'm going to clear it. It does have a pretty formidable effect while it's the active location. But on this quest, I don't like to leave cards in the staging area because of the high threat from the Lonely Mountain and the escalating threat from Smog the Golden. So I'm thinking about whether I want to play Warrior of Lossarnach or not. I decide I'm not going to. I'm going to save it for a burgle attempt. The problem is, on this quest, when you trigger the forced effect from successfully questing, it says place 1 progress on Smog first. That's the first thing you do. And Smog has a forced effect where if he gets 6 progress, you immediately move on. So my interpretation is that you don't finish the burgle attempt. Once you get the 6th progress on Smog, you immediately move to phase 4, and the rest of the burgle attempt is cancelled. That's my interpretation. That's the interpretation that's probably best for the encounter deck. It would have been great for me if I could have completed the burgle attempt. But my interpretation is that as soon as you get 6 on Smog, you're moving on. So I've got to take another turn to clear phase 4 before I can come back and burgle the 6th card. And I also have an additional enemy, Erebor Bats. Causes me to discard a card from hand when he attacks. Smog the Magnificent could be a problem here if he gets multiple burgle shadow cards. And there's 1, so he killed my Anfalas Herdsman. There's nothing, so kills an Anfalas Herdsman and a Knight of the Swan. And the Erebor Bats do nothing, and I can kill them. They do force me to discard a card with their forced effect. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to kill the bats. Pretty formidable bats. And next turn we'll be questing to go back to phase 2, so we don't have to deal with Smog the Magnificent anymore. I'm going to add another character to the staging area, or to the player area at this point, just so I have a cannon fodder guy. And facing 16 threat against, now 20, but that is enough to make my 7 progress. And move back to phase 2. Gonna move to the Great Hall, which means a progress on Smog at the end of the round. And hopefully this round I'll be able to burgle. I'm gonna play Gandalf here. I need to reduce threat. I'm up at 47. Gonna quest for enough to clear the location and make my burgle attempt while dealing with the 10 threat on Lonely Mountain. Success, so there's going to be a burgle, which is it's 3 cards that match the type, and that's going to be event. So, no problem, I do have 3 events, just barely. And that will be the final card burgled. And then I will take the option of moving on to phase 3 at this point. Lonely Mountain will be up to 12 threat, but I can move there now. And I will definitely take the opportunity to do so to get that 12 threat out of the staging area. But first we move on to phase 3. I did this out of order, but no problem. So phase 3, Smog the Golden is gone, Smog the Magnificent is in. In Nightmare mode, Smog the Magnificent can't be damaged until you get a bear patch on him. However, you don't have to damage him to complete the quest. All you need is more progress on the quest than Smog has hit points, so 21 progress. There's no restriction on the amount of progress you can put on stage 3, which means you don't actually have to do any damage to Smog the Magnificent. It gives you the option of beating this quest by questing or beating this quest by combat. The first quest of the Hobbit Saga, We Must Away Ere Break of Day, has that option as well. In Nightmare mode, if I chose to go the combat route, I would not be able to do damage to Smog until Bear Patch is put on him, and Bear Patch is put on him by burgling. So it just would delay it an extra round if I chose to go the combat route, but there's no delay in choosing to go the questing route, and I do have sufficient willpower to quest Smog to death in 1 round. I decide to play that now for no apparent reason. No, I don't decide to. And we're going to play Gandalf once again. Reduce threat by another 5. And now we need 24, 25, 26, 27, 29, plus whatever comes off the encounter deck. 32 at least. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25... 29, 33, 37, 42, maybe 43 if I counted wrong. Oh yeah, Gandalf is 5 because of Faramir's buff. So this goes on the hero with the most resources. Attached hero gets -1 for each resource, and when he spends resources he takes damage. That's no problem at this point in the game. It can be a very big problem earlier in the game. But that's going to do enough progress to kill Smog. We've got 9 threat against to 43 willpower is going to be 34 progress. -4 for the Lonely Mountain is going to be 30. Only needed 21. And that will end the game. I forgot that Smog the Magnificent last round should have made an attack after he entered the staging area because he entered during the questing phase. So I rectify that. I had a Gandalf on the table and available at the time. And so I went back and looked at what characters were available and only had him attack those characters, and an Anfalas Herdsman was available at the time, so that's what's going on here. He was dealt 2 cards in a row with a burgle effect, so he got extra attacks. But I still have plenty of willpower available, as I didn't use my heroes at all. I also had them available for questing. More than enough to end the game here. So this is a difficult quest, a long quest. It requires a specific deck, really. You need good card draw. You need some threat reduction, I'd say. And you need some willpower, some serious willpower, because the Lonely Mountain gets quite high. You're facing at least 10 threat from the Lonely Mountain as you get down toward the end of your burgling. and plus whatever Smog the Golden is contributing, which punishes Minion Swarm a little bit, but not a lot. I was fortunate to draw Ethir Swordsman ×3 very early in the game, and I was able to draw all the instances of Gandalf I need to keep my threat down. Decks with no threat reduction, decks with low willpower, decks with no card draw may struggle on this one, making all 5 burgle attempts. And I realized that when I was correcting that Smog mistake, I didn't deal a shadow card for the Anfalas Herdsman, but that's because I'd paused and gone back and realized that what should have happened was this treachery here that's on Hirluin would have been the shadow card, and that would have been only 1 attack. And then the encounter cards would have been the Crows and the Hidden Path, which still would have resulted in a victory, but with 1 less progress on the quest. But 1 more minion or 1 more ally on my side. So once again, with that, I made things harder on myself than they needed to be. The name of the game in this quest, particular playthrough of this quest, on what is already a very difficult quest, but this deck is well suited to it. And I did get a good draw with 3 Ethir Swordsmen and plenty of plays of Gandalf. And so the quest was made easier for sure by that, particularly the 3 Ethir Swordsmen early. That was a big deal. But important to have strong card draw, strong willpower, and some threat reduction for this one. So, thanks for watching.